Okay, so this video is obviously going to be about Lilo and Stitch with the 3 Stitch plushies on the bed, plus Angel, who is his Bougie Boo, plus the Stitch shirt over there, the Stitch and the Little Mermaid t-shirt, and the Stitch t-shirt that says I tried, and it's him doing a handstand. I love Lilo and Stitch. I also have a Kingdom Hearts shirt because Stitch is in Kingdom Hearts, so I get to talk a little bit about that, and I love what they did with Stitch in Kingdom Hearts. I love Lilo and Stitch. Always have, since when I first saw it as a kid, still love it now. And I'm going to explain to you why, and then we'll get into the movie. So, the movie itself came out in 2002, and when I was 10. My parents got divorced when I was 9. So near the end of 2001 going into 2002, or sometime in 2001 is when they got divorced. And that quite obviously was a very hard time for me. Credit to both my parents. And I've told them this before. They did not fight in front of me or my sister. They did not argue. They did not argue over who would get me when. They both wanted each other to still have time with me. And they didn't get divorced because one of them cheated or anything like that. It was just the relationship just kind of ended from my mom's side. And and my parents know this. I've told them this before. I thank them for the fact that they did not argue or fight or anything like that in front of my sister or I, and that they're still civil to each other to this day. They still get along fine, just things like that. So they know that I'm grateful to that, as opposed to being the one of the ugly divorces or something like that. But my parents got divorced, and then Lilo and Stitch came out, and I'm pretty sure Lilo and Stitch helped me get through my parents' divorce, helped me understand that families change shape all the time, which I knew that. I knew that families change shape. I know that, sometimes a parent dies or both parents die, or there's a divorce, or unfortunately in some cases a child dies, which is not good at all. By any means. I've gone over that in, I think I went over that in the Mother's Day and the Father's Day videos, where I talked about Senor Pink and Rushin in regards to losing Gimlet, that there's that pain there that's different than becoming an orphan or a widow or a widower or something. It's that pain of losing this thing you were supposed to protect. But back to Lilo and Stitch. And it's, the whole concept of Lilo and Stitch is this alien who is supposed to do nothing but destroy, that finds this family and finds this place where he can belong. And, that's just one of the lessons of the movie. There's other lessons in the movie as well, but it's mainly that, that's, the lesson of the movie is family. Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. And, that quote, and then of course the quote that Stitch has at the end of the movie, that is, the quote that'll be on the end of this video, this is my family. I found it all on my own. It's little and broken, but still good. Yeah, still good. That quote helped me understand that even though my parents were divorced now, and even though, I have 2 bedrooms, there's 2 places that I live, it doesn't mean that my parents love me any less or love my sister any less. It just means that my family has a different shape. And in the case with Lilo and Nani, of course, it's, their parents died, which is a different feeling than, parents getting a divorce. There's still a pain there, but there's still that emotional pain there, but it's a different type of pain. And Nani and Lilo, of course, have that pain that they deal with throughout the first movie, and then subsequently, of course, still to a degree through the second movie, through Stitch Has a Glitch, and then into Stitch the movie, and then through the series, and then into Leroy and Stitch, which, as I stated before in, I think, the Atlantis video, and possibly the Recess video, Lilo and Stitch is probably going to have like 2, possibly 3 videos. given how much there is in that franchise, plus the other two series that they had with that was like Stitch the series, and then Stitch and Ali, um, which I'll go over those. But this video is just mostly concentrating on the original movie, and then the bit that Stitch shows up in Kingdom Hearts, because it ties into the movie rather well. Okay, so to the actual movie. As I said, Lilo and Stitch came out in 2002. And of course, the movie opens with, of course, the characters in space. We're introduced to Dr. Jumba Jukiva, who is he's a mad scientist. He's an inventor. He's been doing experimentations and everything, and he's on trial in front of this galactic armada grand council type thing. And the lady in charge of it is referred to as the Grand Councilwoman. I love her. She's awesome. Side note, they had originally tried to get Carrie Fisher to voice her, but unfortunately that didn't happen. That would have been awesome as well. I would have loved that. Yes, get Princess Leia in there. Yes. Or General Leia, as she was later known. That would have been great. But Jumba is on trial. We're introduced to Gantu, who is this giant whale space shark thing. I don't know exactly how to describe him. But he's there, and he's kind of the bailiff type of thing. He's in charge of like security. And Jumba is on trial, and they reveal that, oh no, they know that he made something, and they reveal Stitch inside of this, glass containment thing. And it's described, Stitch he's, can lift things 3,000 times his size, is, faster, extremely fast, can, think faster than a supercomputer, things like that. And, it was like indestructible type of a thing. Jumbo goes through all this stuff, just like explains what Stitch is and everything. And the Grand Councilwoman is, so it's a monster, and he goes, just a little one. I love Jumba. And Jumba is sentenced to prison, and then they are going, the Grand Councilwoman tries to get Stitch to see if there's anything, that can prove, give Stitch a chance to see if he can do, if he can indicate that there's something good in him. And basically whatever Stitch said just made all of them go, oh, like, just, oh my god. Like, it was just like, I'm pretty sure, like, he used, like, a bunch of swear words from, like, whatever language they have. And then, like, threw in, like, and your mama too, or something like that. Whatever the case was. It's just like, they're all insulted, and just like, so some of them, like, one of the other aliens like faints, and one of the other ones that does a robot like throws up bolts. And I'm just like, what did he say? He's like, I want translations of this. But they sentence him to exile. And they're going to take him to, like, this desert asteroid so that way he can just live out his days there, and he's not going to be able to cause harm to anyone. So they have Stitch on a transport ship, and they're, Gantu is the one escorting him. And he, they have him, locked up, and they have him, like, this DNA tracker thing or whatever that, like, will track Stitch's genetic signature wherever it goes. So he uses that as a way to get out of his cage, and then he starts running amok on the ship. And, uses his powers and everything to get out. And he steals a police cruiser. Yep, he took the red one. I love that joke. But he steals a police cruiser, and then he uses, like, hyperdrive, and he heads off. And, the Grand Councilwoman is, trying to figure out where he's going to land, and she has all of her subordinates trying to figure this out. And it's just like, well, he's going to land on this planet called Earth or something like that. It's like, what's that stuff? It's called water. The planet is mostly covered in it. It's like all the blue ocean and everything. And, like, by happenstance, he's going to land on the Hawaiian island. On one of the Hawaiian islands, Keua. Probably gonna mispronounce this. I apologize. Keani. I think it's Kwani. I apologize if I mispronounced that to anyone from or that understands Hawaiian. Um, and that's where he's gonna land, and she's just like, oh god, and she's like, okay, can we gas the planet or whatever? It's like, and in comes the Earth expert, Agent Pleakley. It's like, no, you can't gas the planet, you can't do that. There's an endangered species on there called the mosquito, and I'm like, sure, yes, the mosquitoes are an endangered species. Not. It's like, why mosquitoes? Why did it have to be mosquitoes? Why couldn't have been koalas? Koalas or kangaroos or pandas or, something else that actually is an endangered species that's not a mosquito. And like Pleakley is supposedly the Earth expert. Not really. He has one of those things that I had one of these as a kid. I'm pretty sure a lot of people did. It's like, a projector thing that you hold up to your eyes and you can like click through like the reel, or it'll show you different pictures and such like that. Like he has one of those to teach him about humans. And they send Pleakley and Jumba to the planet so that way they can go and try to retrieve Stitch, because they don't have anyone else that knows enough about Stitch that would be able to figure out his weakness. So they go to Jumba, and there was like, okay, deal. You go to the planet, you get Stitch, you bring him back, your freedom for his capture. Pleakley will going to be escorting you. And then we get Jumba going, so what poor, pitiful, defenseless planet has my monstrosity landed? And then we cut to Hawaii, where we see this little girl swimming, and we see a fish with a peanut butter sandwich swimming off. And we're introduced to the Hawaiian Islands, which are gorgeous, and I want to go there someday. Different places shown in Disney movies that I want to go. The Great Wall of China. I want to go to London. I want to go to New York one day. Just like Disney travel agency. That would be for me. Go to Australia because the rescuers down under. Go to Denmark because of Little Mermaid. Different things like that. That might be a video idea, actually. Video idea of Disney travelogue, where you can go based on different Disney movies. Let me write that down. I have a bunny-themed pen. Yes. Disney travel. Yeah, you can't read that. It says Disney travel tour video. Yeah, no, I will do that at some point. That is a good idea. Don't know why I hadn't thought of that before, but now I have another idea for a Disney video. That would probably be like after I finish up all of the current Disney movies. Yeah. Okay, so back to Lilo and Stitch. Sorry. We see the little girl. We get introduced to a bunch of like the Hawaiian culture. We see hula dancers. We see little girls that are the same age as Lilo that are doing hula dancing at the school. And we see Lilo rushing to there after she was done swimming. And she gets there and she's doing the hula dance with the other girls and with the older girls. And, the dance goes fine. And then, unfortunately, Lilo gets into a fight because she was late. And, she explained to the teacher why she was late. And she's like, well, I had to give Pudge a peanut butter sandwich. Who's Pudge? Well, Pudge is a fish, and he controls the weather. And I had to give him a peanut butter sandwich. And my sister, and we didn't have any peanut butter today. So my sister told me to give him tuna, and I can't give him tuna because, do you know what tuna is? It's a fish. And if I gave Pudge fish, I'd be an abomination, and, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, why is this so important? Pudge controls the weather. I want to know where that idea came from. And they, I love Lilo, and of course she's just called crazy by the other girls, particularly Myrtle. And Myrtle then, Lilo then attacks Myrtle, And admittedly, I can identify with Lilo with the fact of I was picked on a lot as a kid. I was bullied in school, in elementary school, and in middle school. It died down once I got to high school just because I just didn't talk to that many people. I know what it's like to not have a whole lot of friends. Yeah, I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I'm that kid, but, I am kind of just kind of more, I'm fine being on my own. I'm fine with it. Um, and so we had that and everything. So I understand where Lilo's coming from with that. But she's called crazy by the other kids, by the other girls, and they like ostracize her. And we end up getting introduced. Lilo tries to be friends with them, and like she has her doll, Scrub, who is adorable. And they still ostracize her. And then Lilo runs home. She was supposed to wait at the dance place for her sister to show up. Her sister is Nani. We're introduced to Nani. I don't remember if we ever get the exact age difference between Lilo and Nani, but I would assume that Nani is at least 18 to 19 range, given the fact that she is Lilo's legal guardian. So I mean, like, there's a 12 years age difference between my sister and I. And I was my first year of my year of kindergarten, when I was in kindergarten, was my sister's last year of high school. So we overlapped then, but other than that, that was about the closest thing that we got to like overlapping for school. So I'm going to assume that Nani is at least 18 to 19 years old, and at the very least out of high school, because we always see her working or trying to have a job. Lilo is obviously still in school. That gets referenced a fair amount of times later on. Although I would say that it is probably summer at the moment, give or take what's going on throughout the course of the series. That we don't see Lilo going to school throughout the course of the first movie. We don't see her going to school until like the very tail end of it. But Nani rushes home. And she almost gets hit by this car. She kicks the car, and then she goes home, and she gets to the house, and her and Lilo start arguing because Lilo has kind of locked and nailed the door shut. So Nani cannot get in, and Lilo's laying there listening to her record player playing Elvis. Love the kids' taste in music. Listening to it playing Elvis, going, just leave me alone to die. And, Nani's getting angry at her, and then the social worker shows up. And the social worker is, of course, Cobra Bubbles. Best name for a social worker ever. Yeah, best name for a social worker ever. And he shows up, and we get this whole interaction between him and Nani, and him getting to see the house and seeing the way that Nani and Lilo kind of interact with each other. And seeing that Nani is obviously struggling with having to take care of Lilo, which is understandable. We find out that like their parents recently died. We find out later that it was a rainy night, and that's kind of why Lilo, of course, gives Pudge peanut butter sandwiches, so that way he can control the weather, so it's not rainy anymore. So that way there won't be another accident. So she won't lose her sister, or so nobody else will lose their parents. So there's a difference there. And what ends up happening is, Cobra tells Nani, you have 3 days to change my mind, type of thing. Or, this visit did not go well. And like he sees Lilo on the floor, like making like, with a book that says practical voodoo, and she's like taking spoons and like drawing on them and like putting little hula skirts on them to make them look like her friends from hula school, and she's putting them into a pickle jar, and then she's like shaking it up, and she's like, my friends need to be punished. I'm like, I never tried using voodoo on anyone, kid, but okay. And he goes off. And then we get Nani and Lilo having this big argument, and it's, Nani's like, do you want to be taken away? Do you want to not be here anymore? And Nani just, Lilo just, Lilo is just kind of, does the whole goes limp on the floor type of thing. If you have a child and you're having an argument with the child, or the child's just being unruly and they just go limp on the ground as you're trying to drag them away. if I ever did this to my parents, I apologize. I don't remember if I ever did. I'm pretty sure my nieces or nephew have done this to me at least at one point throughout the course of all three of them. But yeah, that moment, and like, they're just arguing, and it's just, Lilo goes to her room and they're still shouting at each other, and then we cut to a little while and they both scream into their pillows, which I've done this. It doesn't muffle the scream too much, but it does help depending on how loud you have to scream. And we cut to a little bit later, and Nani goes into Lilo's room, and Lilo's ready for bed, and Nani brings her pizza, and we get the scene where they're talking about, Lilo's like, I like you better as a sister than a mom, and just like all this talking about being sisters and everything. Because initially when they showed some of it to pre-test to some of the test audiences, in that scene, it had been different. It had been a slightly different scene, and they thought that Nani was Lilo's mom, that like maybe Lilo's dad died or something like that, and that Nani was Lilo's mom, not her older sister. So we get the explanation of, no, they're sisters. They're very much sisters. And, Lilo, Nani cheers Lilo up, and they kind of try to, make each other feel better. And then there's this, all the lights go out, and then there's like this green flare that comes by the window. And they go and they look at, and like Lilo thinks that it's a falling star, so she's going to make a wish. So she shoves Nani out of the room, and, she goes in and she makes her wish. And she's like, praying. And there's actually, I think I've mentioned this in some other videos or so, there's not that many characters throughout Disney that we actually see praying. One of them is Penny from The Rescuers. We see her praying when she's, when she's at the orphanage. We see Esmeralda pray, of course, in Hunchback of Notre Dame during the God Help the Outcast sequence. There was like, I think 2 other ones, but I cannot remember who they are off the top of my head for like Disney animated movies where we actually see someone like pray. I have it listed down in the notes, so I'll probably get to it a little bit later. But, Lilo's praying. She's like, just like, send me someone who won't run away, an angel, the nicest angel you have. Cut to Stitch climbing out of the rocket ship, or out of the crash spaceship, looking like a psychotic demon. There's a lot of memes of that. I'm aware of it. There's ones with like Deku being the one praying, and then Kacchan popping out of the wreckage looking evil. There's other ones. I think there's been like Avatar The Last Airbender ones. There's a whole bunch of other ones that are just memes of that moment. It's like, send me an angel. Ha ha! Not that angel. And like Nani listens to this, and then the next day her and Lilo go to the Nani listens to this, so she's like, okay, well, I need to do something to help Lilo. And then we cut to, Stitch in the rocket ship, and, he survived the crash, and he's out, and he's roaming around, and he tries to attack a frog, and then he gets run over by like a truck and a half, like a semi-truck. And then they then take him to the shelter. And the next morning, Lilo and Nani are at the shelter, and, Lilo goes in and looks around. Stitch woke up, and he, tries to, get out of the shelter, and then he almost gets attacked by Jumba and Pleakley, so he runs back into the shelter, and he's like, okay, well, obviously I can't go outside right now because Jumba and Pleakley will attack me, so I kind of need a version of a human shield. So he's like, So, Stitch, brings in his arm, he's got 4 arms, so he brings in the 2 in his middle, and he, like, makes his antennae go away, and he has, like, ridges on his back that he, like, sucks in, pulls into his body so they're not, out and about and causing any problems. And so he kind of looks like a dog. And then, Lilo comes back, and, she sees Stitch, and they interact, and she decides she wants to get Stitch. And the shelter lady kind of freaks out when she sees Lilo, and when she sees the 626, when she sees Stitch, not yet named Stitch, we're about to get where she names him, and she's like, oh yes, all of our dogs are adoptable, except that one! And it's like, what's wrong with that one? It was like, well, it was dead this morning. It was dead this morning? Well, it got hit by a truck. We thought it was dead. I'm like, yeah, no, I can understand that. And like all the rest of the dogs in the building are just like terrified of Stitch, which again, I don't blame them. They can tell it's not a dog. And, Lilo still wants him. And, she's like, no, he's good. I can tell. And I'm just like, sure, child, we can go with that. And, she names him Stitch. And, they get all the adoption forms done. So Stitch now legally belongs to, Lilo. And, then Stitch, Lilo and Stitch go outside, and Stitch kind of, uses Lilo as kind of a human shield, which in the context of understanding that, that's not a good thing, but you need it as like a thing that'll keep it going to keep, Stitch and Lilo having to be together. So that way Jumba and Pleakley cannot attack him openly. And so they have to stay hidden. And then we get, Nani gives Lilo some money and lets her and Stitch go off and like spend the day together. I'm like, you want to get a leash for the dog so it won't run off or something like that. Like Lilo has like a spray bottle that she keeps spraying on Stitch to, help him, try to behave better. I don't know how well that concept actually works with dogs. By the way, Rainy, the fluff ball that he is, will do sit, will do stay, but most everything else, not so much. We've tried. He's like, why do I need to learn how to do this stuff? You guys will give me the treats and the food and the pets anyway, so why do I need to learn how to do it? I'm just already cute. It's like, we would be happy if you just learned to come when we call your name when we're at the park. But, so Lilo and Stitch are like roaming around the island and stuff like that. They're walking around town. They get like shaved ice. They're just relaxing and having fun. And then they run into Myrtle and her friends. And, Stitch, they call Lilo a weirdo again. They call Stitch ugly. And again, can we please kick them? I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to punching or kicking little children, but Myrtle Edmonds I will make an exception for. Because I've known several people that were like her. We do learn throughout the course of the series itself, mainly the animated series, that Myrtle has kind of her own issues. Her mom is very nice, but Myrtle's dad left a long time ago, so I think Myrtle just kind of, inner hatred forced out onto Lilo because she's the closest thing. But still, I'll go over that a little bit more when I get to like the actual series itself, because we get a little more character development on some of the other side characters throughout that series, throughout the course of the animated series. But Stitch steals Myrtle's like tricycle, and then him and Lilo go off, and he's like rushing all over the island, all the different corners of the island, trying to figure out if there's any big cities on the island. And there's none, and Lilo just says, isn't it nice living on a place with no large cities? And Stitch just finds that to be like the worst idea ever. And we have Jumba and Pleakley following them around, and Jumba explains to Pleakley that his Stitch's destructive programming will soon be taking effect. He'll be irresistibly drawn to large cities where he'll back up he'll back up plumbing, reverse street signs, and steal everyone's left shoe. And my answer to this is, okay, I get the backing up the plumbing. What's wrong with reversing street signs necessarily beyond causing a lot of traffic jams? And why in the world do you have something against people's left shoe? I'm like, where did that come from, Jumba? Do you have an issue with that? Did like someone insult your left foot at some point? Or I don't know. I don't know. It's just random stuff. And like, so they're wandering around the island, and then they end up at the hotel where Nani works. That night, Nani's a waitress at this very nice Hawaiian themed hotel and everything, which there's a bunch of these all over Hawaii. And Lilo and Stitch are there, and they're eating, and Lilo's draws this picture of Stitch and does like, this is you. This is your badness level. It's unusually high for someone your size, in regards to critiquing Stitch and everything. And Nani and Lilo are talking, and we see David, who's the fire performer, at the hotel, and he's kind of, he has this crush on Nani, and he like adores her, but he's perfectly fine with like, he understands that she's dealing with Lilo and has all these other issues that she has to deal with right now. And David is just like perfectly supportive the entire way through, even the entire way through the other movies and the series. David is 100% supportive of Nani, and I love that. And I just love that. Um, and he's 100% supportive of her, and he acts like a big brother to Lilo, and I love that. It's great. And what ends up happening is, uh, you know, Nani, Stitch causes a commotion because Jumba and Pleakley try to catch him, and then it causes a commotion. And then Stitch kind of makes it appear like Stitch attacked these guests, and Nani had to stop him, and then Nani gets kind of fired / quits, and she tells Lilo, it's like, no, I didn't get fired. The vampire's a manager, and he wanted me to join his Legion of the Undead. And Lilo's like, I knew it. And they get home that night. And, Lilo and Nani, kind of start showing Stitch around the house, and Stitch starts causing more problems. And then, Nani tries to, drag him out of the house so she can take him back to the shelter and everything, because he's like, no, this isn't working. There's something wrong with him. And, Lilo uses the whole, the Ohana, he's Ohana, he's family, blah, 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 blah. He's family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten and everything. And Nani kind of relents, and then Nani, and Lilo and Stitch go up to Lilo's room, where she shows him around, and then Stitch causes more problems in Lilo's room. And one of the things that like pauses Stitch, because at one point he's, he like attacks not Lilo's doll. He attacks Lilo's one of her paintings that she has, and then she grabs one of the leis that's in her room, which is the Australian not Australian, Hawaiian, the flower wreaths and everything, and she like throws that over Stitch, and it just like makes him freeze and like calm, and then he falls down just like, this is different. And she's like, all you do is destroy things. Why don't you try making something? So he makes like this, uses like books and stuff from Lilo's room, and makes like this like scale model of like a San Francisco street, and then he starts destroying it. What ends up happening is, Lilo goes to bed, and Stitch is just kind of left alone with his own thoughts, and we see Jumba and Pleakley talking, and Jumba makes the comment of, I never gave him another purpose. I never, gave him anything else to do besides cause chaos and everything. And, it's just, what is that like to turn to in the middle of the night and doesn't even have memories or anything? And, we get, Jumba and Pleakley are there a little bit for like humorous moments, because at one point, like a bunch of mosquitoes show up, and like they just like cover Pleakley completely, and then they all bite down, and Pleakley just goes much higher pitched and much louder than that, but still, and just like covered in all these mosquito bites and everything. And so we do get some heartfelt moments with Jumba in that moment, and then we cut back to Stitch, and he looks through a bunch of Lilo's books. And there's like a map, like an atlas that he pulls out, like a map or whatever of the islands, and then he finds a storybook that is like a bunch of it's the Ugly Duckling book, and he sees this picture of like this little duck in the middle of the woods, it's I'm lost, and he climbs up onto the bed, and he wakes Lilo up, and she explains the story to him of there's this ugly duckling, and he gets separated from his gets separated from his family, so he's sad, so he cries for them, and then they show up and they find him, and then he's happy because he's not alone anymore. And we see that, and like Stitch seems to identify with that. And then we cut to the next morning, and Cobra Bubble shows back up. Well, first we have it that Lilo introduced Stitch to Elvis Presley music. And what ends up happening is the next morning, not Lilo wakes up Nani, and she has Stitch there, and they have the record player going, and she has Stitch touch the record player with a claw, and then she keeps opening and closing his mouth, and like the music comes out, and like Nani's just like, I don't think dogs are supposed to do that type of a thing. And then, then that's when Cobra Bubble shows up, and he explains, he's like, I don't like that you're jobless. That's not good. And Nani's like, well, I'm going to be looking for a job today, I promise. Those hours at the hotel were just not good to raising a child. And he's like, okay. And then Stitch throws a book at him, and he gets angry, and I don't blame him. And he's like, okay, so yeah, no, you need a job, and that dog needs to become a model citizen. And then Lilo and Nani, kind of have their work cut out for them that day. Nani's going all over the island, talking to different people, trying to find a job. And Lilo decides that she's going to teach Stitch to be a model citizen by having him model himself after Elvis Presley. Dancing, singing, playing guitar, being very suave and romantic. We have, the two of them, dancing and everything, which is adorable. And Nani is, she's trying to get this job at like this fruit stand with this old lady that is very hard of hearing. And then she tries at this hotel, which doesn't go very well. And then, she tries at this coffee shop, again, doesn't go very well. And then we get to the beach, and, Lilo, like has Stitch perform, and like Nani's about to get this job as like being a lifeguard. And so it's like, okay, let's see what happens. And then, Lilo has Stitch, try to perform, and it goes well until there's so many, he's like dressed as Elvis and everything. And like the crowd just thinks the beachgoers thinks that he's great. But what ends up happening is, unfortunately, all the flashes from the camera kind of set Stitch off, and then he ends up attacking everyone and causing chaos, and everybody flees from the beach. And then we, Nani and Lilo are just both very, this is not going well. And what ends up happening is, Lilo, Pleakley and Jumba have been watching this whole time. And what ends up happening is, David shows up, and he, invites them to take a break and just enjoy the day, day of surfing and everything. And I love the music that they have in this, because they combine, like, there's like traditional Hawaiian sounding music and just songs from Hawaii that are there. And then there's, they bring in the Elvis Presley music and everything. And I love what they do with the music in this movie. I think I have the soundtrack to it. I think it's one of the soundtracks that I have. I got a lot of the Disney soundtracks, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone that watches these videos. But they all surf and they have fun, and Stitch is like very confused about all of this. And he watches Nani and Lilo and David, having fun, and like they build a sandcastle together. And Stitch just kind of feels left out, and he kind of just wants to feel like part of it, like part of the group. And of course, they bring Stitch in with that, and he goes, rides on the surfboard with them and everything. And Stitch is just kind of starting to feel a little bit better. And then Jumba and Pleakley, Jumba grabs Stitch while they're on the surfboard, and then that makes Nani and Lilo, that makes the surfboard fall, because Nani can't keep her balance because it messed up her balance. And then they fall into the water, and then Stitch tries to get away from Jumba, and he grabs Lilo and almost drags her down, and Nani and David have to save Lilo and save Stitch. And it's this moment where it's just and Cobra Bubble saw this from sees this and everything, and he tells Nani that although he knows she means well, he has to take Lilo from her, and that they have the next day, the next morning he'll be there to get Lilo. And Stitch kind of, David got Stitch out of the water and everything. Stitch is very weak to water. He doesn't have a devil fruit, but he's very weak to water. Stitch, because of he's extremely dense in his molecular makeup. So it means that anytime that he's in enough amount of water, he will sink. He can't swim. They've found remedies to this a little bit in the series. Like if he has like flotation devices on him, he can swim better and stuff like that. So there's a difference there. But if it's just him, he can't swim. That's like his weakness. And what ends up happening is, you know, Stitch kind of saw this, and he sees how sad Nani and Lilo are, and he sees them that night and sees, you know, Nani sings to Lilo and is kind of explaining to Lilo, you know, hasn't quite had the chance to explain to Lilo that tomorrow morning is when Cobra Bubbles is going to show up, and he's going to take you away and take you to, you know, a better family. And Stitch kind of thinks that, you know, oh, this is kind of my fault. And so he kind of runs away. He, you know, and we get this sad moment where you have him and Lilo there. And he's like, you know, he sees the picture of the family, and Lilo's like, it was raining and their car didn't stop. And, you know, it's like this sad moment where we get this, you know, where like Lilo's explaining to Stitch, you know, that's how her parents died. There was a car accident. And, you know, she doesn't want to leave Nani. Of course she doesn't want to leave Nani. Nani's the only family she has left, is her big sister. And what ends up happening is, you know, Stitch, you know, decides that he's going to run away. And Lilo's like, that's okay. You can leave. See if I can get through this without crying. That's okay. You can leave. But I'll remember you, though. I remember everyone who leaves. And it's just this moment in the story where it's one of those heart-wrenching moments. And, you know, Stitch goes, and he goes into the forest, and he, you know, he has his ugly duckling book, and he, you know, it's like, you know, he's like, I'm lost, into the forest. And, you know, so he waits until the next morning, and then Jumba shows up, and, you know, he's like, what are you doing out here? And he's like, I'm waiting for family. And Jumba and Fleekley had gotten fired that morning, from working for the Grand Councilwoman. They got fired. And Jumba's like, oh, you don't have a family. I made you. And if you come with me, we'll quietly disassemble you. I'm like, I do not want to be disassembled. Thank you very much. And Stitch runs off, and Fleekley and Jumba start chasing after them. And we cut to the house, and Lilo tells Nani that, you know, Stitch left. And Nani is, you know, tries to explain to, you know, is going to tell Lilo that, you know, sometimes things change, and sometimes it's for the better. And, you know, this is when, you know, Nani's probably been up all night long trying to figure out something, you know, figure out how to tell Lilo this, how to tell her sister goodbye. And then, you know, knock on the door, and it's David, and he's like, I found you a job. And like, they're, you know, Nani's like, okay, so that if I have a job, then that might help with keeping Lilo and everything. And, you know, so, you know, her and David run off, and, you know, that's when, you know, that's when Stitch and Jumba show up, and Stitch starts, you know, Jumba starts attacking, and he doesn't have any regard for, you know, causing problems and damage and everything. And, you know, Stitch and Jumba start getting into this fight and everything, and Lilo's helping Stitch, and, you know, Stitch throws the blue bug at you know, Jumba at one point, and Lilo tries hitting Jumba with a broom at one point, and, you know, Lilo tried calling Cobra Bubbles and saying, you know, Agent Bubbles, aliens are attacking my house, and then Fleekley is there trying to protect Lilo. And, you know, just like all this stuff, and like, you know, Stitch finds the chainsaw and is trying to attack Jumba. And, you know, so we get this whole kind of, you know, inside the house fight. And then, you know, Fleekley gets Lilo out of there, and like Stitch had managed to plug up Jumba's, you know, plasma cannon, but it's, you know, it's set to fire, so it keeps building up, and like they're tossing it back and forth, you know, you take it, you take it, you take it, you take it, you know, just like back and forth, and like, just drop it and run. And, you know, that blows up, and it blows up the house. And, you know, Stitch is fine, but, you know, he gets to, you know, he finds Lilo, and Lilo, one of the things that survived, kind of strange but survived, was the picture of Lilo and Nani's parents. and of them with their parents. And you know, Lilo sees that Stitch is an alien because he reveals his extra arms and his antenna and everything. And she's like, "You're one of them?" And she just gets so angry at him, you know, "Go, I never want to see you again," type of a thing. And Nani and David, you know, Nani got the job, and then they see fire trucks go by, and it goes up the road to their house, and Nani and David are rushing back to the house, and Cobra Bubbles is there, and he has Lilo in the car, and Nani's like, "You can't take Lilo away from me. If you take her away, she'll never survive. I'm the only one who understands her," type of a thing. You know, she can't, you know, "I'm the only one," type of a thing. And, you know, Cobra is, you know, I don't blame him. He's like, you know, "Is this," you know, it's pointing at the, you know, the smoldering house, "is this what she needs?" And, you know, he's doing his job. I mean, most social workers, they just want to help kids. They just want to make sure that kids are in good places. One of my coworkers at work used to be a social worker, and, you know, she strikes me as one of the people that would do everything they could to help keep their kids safe and happy. And, you know, what ends up happening is, you know, Lilo gets out of the car and she escapes. And, you know, Cobra and Nani and David are all very worried about this. And what ends up happening is, you know, Lilo runs into the forest, and she, you know, runs into the woods area, and Gantu traps her and traps Stitch. And he, you know, he you know, is, you know, captures them, and he puts them onto his ship to take them back. And Stitch gets out, and he's about to try to get Lilo out, but he gets knocked off the ship. And he then, you know, then we have it that, you know, Nani finds him, and she you know, she has this broom, and she starts beating Stitch with the broom, going, "Okay, I know that you can talk. Tell me where Lilo is." And, you know, Stitch eventually just tries to explain, but then Jumba and Plickly show up, and, you know, they catch Stitch. And then, because Stitch is vulnerable, of course, he just saw his friend get taken from him. And he's in a very emotional place right now, and I don't blame him. And Nani confronts Jumba and Plickly, and she's like, "Where is Lilo?" It's like, "We don't know. She's a little girl this big with black hair and brown eyes, and she hangs around with that thing." And of course, Jumba and Plickly kind of relent, and she's like, "Bring her back." And Stitch kind of convinces Jumba that, "No, you have to do this. You have to help find this girl. She's done nothing to you. You know, you can't let this girl get hurt," or whatever type of a thing. However it is that Stitch convinces him, which is very easy for Stitch to do, apparently. And they get through that. They get, you know, Jumba and Plickly agree to help Nani and Stitch to get Lilo back, and they get into their spaceship. And, you know, they're flying after Jumba, or flying after a Gantu ship. And what ends up happening is, you know, this is when we get like this, you know, kind of a mid-air battle, flying battle and everything between the two ships. And, you know, Stitch is, you know, gets out of his ship, gets onto Lilo, or gets on the Gantu ship, you know, is trying to save Lilo. And, you know, him and Gantu keep fighting with each other. And at one point, you know, Stitch lands on the ground in the same spot where he, you know, landed when he first landed in Kauai. And he, you know, he grabs one of these tankers that has, like, you know, a whole bunch of, you know, fuel in it, and he, you know, drives it to the volcano, and then he makes the volcano blow up, and then he launches himself into the air at Gantu's ship, and, you know, just, you know, defeats Gantu. And we get the moment where he was like, "You're foul, you're foul, you're phlegm," or whatever it is that he said. And Stitch goes, "Also cute and fluffy," and, you know, he, you know, beats Gantu, and he saves Lilo, and he saves Gantu too, so Gantu doesn't die, because Stitch doesn't want to kill anyone anymore. And, you know, they land in the ocean, and David's there, and David helps get them back to the beach. And he's like, you know, David's talking to Stitch, he's like, "So you're from outer space? I've heard the surfing's choice." And it's just like, "Yes." And then that's when the Grand Councilwoman is there, and she arrests Stitch, and you know, she arrests Stitch, and then she's ready to arrest Gantu. Oh, well, not Gantu. Gantu's fired because he failed again. But arrest Jumba and Plickly as well. And, you know, she's yelling at Jumba, and, you know, it's like, you're the cause of all of this. You're the reason all of this happens. And Stitch is just like, and she was like, if it wasn't for you, experiment number 626, Stitch. Huh? My name's Stitch. Whatever. If it wasn't for you, Stitch. She looks back at him. Does Stitch have to go in the ship now? Yes. Can Stitch say goodbye? Yes. And she's just like slightly bewildered by this. And like Stitch is in like cuffs and everything. And she's like, and he's like, thank you. And he walks over to Lilo and Nani. And the Grand Councilman looks at him and goes, who are you? Like to the people, to Lilo and Nani. And Stitch is like, the line, you know, this is my family. It's little and broken, but still good. Yeah, still good. And oh god, that line alone, I just love that line. And you know, she, you know, you know, Plickly kind of was like, does he have to go back? And like it's just, you know, this you know, and then like Cobra Bubbles is there, and he's like, you know, oh, you know, aliens are all about rules or whatever. And like you listen, you know, whispers to Lilo, didn't you get that thing at the shelter? She goes, and she shows, you know, the Grand Councilwoman the paperwork that, you know, shows that Stitch is hers. And she goes, if you take him, you're stealing. And, you know, the Grand Councilwoman is just like, and like she recognizes Cobra Bubbles. She was like, oh yes, Roswell, 1973. I'm like, okay then, yeah, Roswell, sure. New Mexico. Area 51. We can go with that. And yeah. And they you know, the Grand Councilwoman says that, you know, Stitch is to live in exile here on Earth under the protection of this family, and that Lilo and Nani are now under the protection of the Galactic Federation. And you know, Nani and, you know, Jumba and Fleekley are kind of banished to Earth as well. And she leaves, and, you know, then we cut to, you know, Jumba, you know, Cobra can't take Lilo away from Nani now because they're under the protection of the Global Federation. And obviously Nani proved herself with being a good big sister and everything, and she has her job now at the, you know, at a grocery store or whatever. And we cut to, you know, them all rebuilding their house, and, you know, Jumba and Pleakley become members of the family. And, you know, they're all rebuilding the house with David's help and everything. And I think Cobra Bubbles helps with that too. And then we just kind of just like this sequence of adorable scenes with, you know, the Elvis song playing in the background, Burn in Love playing in the background. And we have, you know, Stitch makes Lilo a giant birthday cake. Stitch is trying to help with laundry. Stitch sending Lilo off to school. Them, you know, surfing and having fun with Nani and David, having fun on the beach. We see Christmas with like Jumba and Plickly showing up, which is adorable, and I love it. And then we get like all these different shots of like all these different like vacations that they've now been on. You know, they go to Graceland, they go somewhere where it's snowing, so like Colorado or Alaska. They go to, you know, just like all these other places. They go on like a cruise at some point, just like all these other places that they get to go. And it's just fun, and like David and Nani like going on dates and stuff like that. And, you know, Stitch being nice to, you know, some of the local wildlife and everything. And, you know, just like all this other stuff. And then we cut to, you know, all the way through all these different pictures that are like scrolling by, like from a photo album or on a fridge or whatever. And then we cut down to the last picture, which is, you know, Nani and Lilo and their parents. And then in where like a stinge mark on the bottom, they've put in Stitch at the bottom to show all of them together. So we see that. And I love Lilo and Stitch. As I said, it's one of my favorite Disney movies. Love it, love it, love it. You know, that's where the first movie ends. For the casting, we have Chris Sanders as Stitch. He's also, I think, one of the heads of story or so for the movie. We have Dave Chase. Davy Chase plays Lilo. We have Tia Carrere, Carrari. As Nani, we have David Ogden Stiers as Jumba. He is also, as I mentioned in previous Disney videos, he is also Lumiere, or not Lumiere, Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast. He is also Ratcliffe from the Pocahontas movies. He's also the archdeacon or the archbishop in Hunchback of Notre Dame in the original one. I love him. And then we have Kevin McDavid Kevin McDonald as Plickly. We have Ving Rhames as Cobra Bubbles. We have Zoe Caldwell as Grand Councilwoman. As I mentioned, they wanted to try to get Carrie Fisher as her, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Kevin Michael Richardson is Gantu. Jason Scott Lee is David, and I do believe that Tia Carrere and Jason Scott Lee, the lady voiced Nani, are both actually from Hawaii. The girl that voices Lilo is also the girl that voices Chihiro in Spirited Away, in the Disney dubbed version of Spirited Away, and she did a great job in that. If I remember correctly, she's also the little girl that's like the disturbing monster in The Grudge, which I have never seen because I do not like horror movies and I never plan on seeing it. We have there's not really too many other names, just other various characters. Of course, the songs that of course we use in the movie are of course Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride, Stuck on You, Burn in Love, Suspicious Minds, Heartbreak Hotel, You're the Devil in Disguise, He Mele no Lilo, which is another Hawaiian one, Hound Dog, Can't Help Falling in Love with You, Aloha Oi, and Suspicious Minds again, for like a different release of it, for like all the different songs that are in the movie, which I love. Let's see, trivia for the movie, or notes. Lilo and Stitch is one of the few Disney animated films that actually takes place in like the time period where the movie is released. Dumbo is one of them, 101 Dalmatians is another, The Rescuers, and then The Rescuers Down Under, Oliver and Company, Bolt later on, and Wreck-It Ralph, both of the Wreck-It Ralph movies take place in that same time frame that they're introduced in. And it's one of the few original stories as opposed to an adaptation based on like a fairy tale or literature or novel or something like that, or historical stuff, because there's not really anything in Lilo and Stitch that's like based from a fairy tale. I mean, I guess if you stretch it, it is a little bit based on like the lonely duckling or whatever. Deleted scenes. Let's see. Stitch was originally supposed to be a leader of an intergalactic gang, and Jumbo was like one of his cronies instead, and or one of someone who was sent after Stitch, but they didn't end up doing that. The biggest change is during the final act of the movie, when they're doing the big spaceship fight. In the movie, they're like flying through like the mountains in Hawaii and the forests and everything, and over the water and everything. In the original, the thought had been to have them flying through downtown Honolulu to save Lilo. But because of the September 11th attacks, unfortunately, that had happened several months previously, they changed the sequence. They still used most of the same maneuvers of the characters and everything. They just shifted around and having it be like in the mountains and in the over the ocean and everything, as opposed to that, because of reasons, and I don't blame them. As I said, they also had to adjust one of the scene when Lilo and Nani are talking about being sisters instead of being mother and daughter. There's just a couple of other things that's going on. There's not too much else. I did want to talk about the advertisements that they did for this movie, because they are so adorable and I love them. Okay, so one of the things that they did was they did these different kind of spoof Disney trailers for Lilo and Stitch. They did a Beauty and the Beast one, they did a Little Mermaid one, and an Aladdin one, and a Lion King one. And they did like these different spoofs to, um, kind of play up, Stitch not quite belonging, seemed like he didn't quite belong at Disney. So one of the first ones is the Beauty and the Beast one, and it was like recent Disney movies, with Beauty and the Beast, and it's during, the ballroom dance and everything when Belle and Beast are, dancing around the ballroom, and like you cut up to the ceiling where you see all the cherubs, but instead you see Stitch running across the ceiling, and he's like watching Belle and Beast dance, and he like grabs on the chandelier, and then the chandelier falls and like nearly crushes Belle and Beast, but they, but Beast saves Belle, and Belle just like huffs, and she was like, "I'll be in my room," and she walks past Stitch and like the destroyed chandelier, and she goes, "Get your own movie," and she walks off. And then we have the Little Mermaid one, which is, it's the, the part of your world sequence where it's Ariel is singing on the rock, and instead of it being, like the wave comes up behind her and like crests behind her to give her that, the crescendo in the song, it's Stitch surfing on the wave, and almost crashes into, Ariel, so that just makes that picture even funnier with the two of them together. And so he kind of ruined her song. So she goes, "I was singing here," and she throws a starfish at him. And then we end up having the Aladdin one, which is Aladdin and Jasmine during the a whole new world sequence and everything, and Stitch shows up in his spaceship, and he's like flirting with Jasmine. He was like, "Hey, baby," and just like, she like, it's like Aladdin's just like, "What is this thing?" And Jasmine's just like, "Hmm." And she like gets on the spaceship and rides off with him, and we have Aladdin shouting, "Get your own movie," at Stitch, which is just funny as all get out. So funny. And then the Lion King one is, we have it that it's the opening sequence, and what happens is, it's, the opening sequence, the circle of life sequence, and Rafiki walks up, and then he holds up, and instead of it's Simba, it's Stitch, and like all the animals are just like crickets, and then Timon goes, "That's not Simba." And then like, all the animals freak out and everything and leave Pride Rock, and Stitch is just left there, and then Stitch just like, "Rah!" tries roaring, and it doesn't work. It's just that funny that, hey, that's not Simba. And then they have this other thing that they did for kind of like a promo thing for Lilo and Stitch, and it's where they did this joke that like Stitch has been at Disney since the beginning, since like way back like Snow White days, but like he's just like, he's always been there, but like they had to keep hiding him, or he had to be in like different sections, or like he just never could quite figure out where like he would fit in. So they do this like joke reel, and like one of them was like, the Snow White one is like the dwarves when they're crossing the log on the way back, the hi-ho sequence on the way home, and then there's like Stitch on the bottom of the log like following them. And then they had, they did this with a bunch of them. What was one of the other ones? There was Pinocchio, where they had like Stitch being like a prop, like another puppet in Geppetto's workshop. And then there was what was one of the other ones that they did? They did Peter Pan one, where he's supposedly in Peter Pan on like the pirate ship. And then there's him. He's in supposedly in Sleeping Beauty. He was like one of the little gremlin guards that worked for Maleficent. Played one of them. And then like he's in 101 Dalmatians, like covered in spots and like looking like one of the puppies. Lady and the Tramp, where it's like he's like a stand-in for Lady during the spaghetti sequence. What was one of the other ones? They were so funny. I shouldn't have a list. One of the other ones was like Pocahontas, where he's helping Pocahontas like run her lines, and he's like fishing to try to get lunch for them. Jungle Book. He was like supposedly in Jungle Book in the background, like playing like the guitar during like the King Louis sequence where they're like singing and dancing and everything. And then there's he was supposedly in Mulan, like on set, like helping train them in like the martial arts. Um, I think I got them all. Did I get all of them? I think I got all of them. If I didn't, I'll pop in whatever other pictures I missed. But it's just funny watching that. I loved it. I thought that they were so funny and so sweet. Um, and like this joke that it's like he's been there since the beginning. We just finally found a place for him to be. Oh, the other thing for Snow White was like they wanted him to be like he tried to be like a woodland creature in Snow White, but that didn't work. He didn't quite fit the motif that they wanted. Okay, and then now we have why I have the Kingdom Hearts shirt. Stitch does appear in Kingdom Hearts. He appears in one of the. I think he's in Kingdom Hearts 2 at one point as like a summon. And like one of the ways that like you find out that you have him as a summon or whatever is like you get like this just like cute interaction with Stitch between Stitch and Sora, which I just think is adorable. But the other main thing that we have with Stitch is in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. So in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, there are the three characters. There's Ventus, Terra, and Aqua. And one of the things that Aqua does, and she made these things called wayfinders, which are wayfinders are just like these kind of object representations of like being able to find your way home type of a thing, or being able to find your way back to someone. And we're kind of introduced to these at one point in the series anyway, this concept of these star-shaped things that'll help you stay connected to people. And what ends up happening is during Birth by Sleep, all three of the the Keyblade wielders end up in the Deep Space section, which is where Stitch is. And the Deep Space section takes place in between when Stitch escapes from his cell and when he finds his way to the red police cruiser. And your job is to kind of help Stitch. So Stitch kind of joins. He doesn't quite join your party, but you interact with him as like all three characters. And at one point, like Stitch sees the wayfinders that each of them have, and like one of them explains them to him. And what ends up happening is, he briefly steals the Keyblade wielder's Terra. I think he steals Terra's wayfinder, and then Terra explains what it means to him. So Stitch gives it back to him, and then we have it that Aqua arrives and she encounters him, and he's made his own wayfinder out of like bits of scrap and everything, and it's adorable. And I want to find a way to make one because it's adorable. And she helped. It unfortunately gets destroyed by Gantu, so then that makes Stitch angry, of course. And then later on, at the end of the sequence, at the end of the that section for the Deep Space, you have it that Stitch is flying away and on the police cruiser, and his on his steering wheel is the wayfinder. So I just find that adorable that they did that. Kind of introducing this concept of like friendship to Stitch, this this bond, this type of thing to Stitch even before he ends up on Earth in that context. I just thought that was adorable. And I'm gonna make one of these. I'm gonna make a wayfinder that looks like Stitch's because I like them a lot. I might see if I can find a way to make a wayfinder myself because they're just adorable. And so that just ties in. So like, and then Stitch goes off, and that's when he goes off into the movie, and everything that goes back into when he goes with Lilo. So that's where that falls into the movie. And then we have just a few little bits of trivia about Lilo and Stitch. Basically, my favorite piece of trivia that goes along with this is in 2015. And if I had planned this better, I would have tried to want to get Stitch, the Lilo and Stitch, or at least the first video, out on Stitch Day, June 26th. But unfortunately, I'm recording this on the first day of July, so that's definitely not happening. And it'll still be a couple of weeks before it goes up. So when you're finally seeing it here, it'll be a couple of weeks later. But what it was in 2015, there was the court case, the Supreme Court case, ruled in Habergefell versus Hodge, ruled that it is unconstitutional for any of the states in America to ban gay marriage, as all U.S. citizens have the fundamental right to marry, as stated by the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And because of the month and day of the ruling was made on June 26th, and Stitch's experiment number is, of course, 626, many fans began associating it with Stitch for that decision. And because, Stitch is always about, family and love and everything. And Dean Du Bois, who was the former story supervisor for Lilo and Stitch, ended up, he's also kind of the designer for Lilo and Stitch. He drew this picture of Stitch and Scrump with flags. Stitch is holding, the rainbow flag and everything and waving it around. And Scrump is holding the flag with the yellow equal sign representing the logo for the Human Rights Campaign. And I love it. And I think it's adorable. And I love the fact that it did land in Pride Month. And again, if I had planned this better, I would have tried to, if I'd been able to plan out some of this better, I would have wanted to get like this out on like Stitch Day, June 6, June 26. Unfortunately, that obviously did not happen. But I remember when like that court ruling came down, and I think I remember when I saw some of these pictures coming up of, Stitch and like the love wins and everything. And I just love that. So the next one that will be up for this will be the Lilo and Stitch, the second video, which is going to be me going over Lilo and Stitch, Stitch Has a Glitch, which, yeah, I think that would be the next one. Yeah, it'd be Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch. And then I'm going to tie that one in with Stitch the movie. So technically Stitch Has a Glitch came out in 2005, and then Stitch the movie came out in 2003. But because Stitch Has a Glitch takes place prior to Stitch the movie, one came out before, and the first one came out second, but it technically in the canon of the story takes place beforehand. And I'm going to do those two together, and then I'll do another video where I talk about the Lilo and Stitch, the series, and then the movie Leroy and Stitch, which kind of is a way to end out the series, and then kind of talk a little bit about the two other TV series that they had, which were Stitch the series, and then Stitch and I. Who's one of them is Stitch he becomes friends with like a Japanese girl named Yuna, and then the other one is he ends up becoming friends with a Chinese girl named Ai. Sorry if I mispronounced some of the names. So I'll go over those ones as well. But yeah, so those will be a little bit of that. But that's what I have for this video. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And remember, Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. And then cue the other quote. This is my family. I found it all on my own. It's little and broken, but still good. Yeah, still good.